The cameras were rolling, but nobody was ready for what came next. In a moment that sent shockwaves through the love and hip-hop universe, Rasheeda stood tall, eyes brimming with betrayal. Voice trembling with restrained fury, and dropped the words that echoed like thunder. "You'll regret this." Fans are still gasping. Friends are picking sides. And Kirk looked like he'd just seen a ghost. The moment was raw, unfiltered, and heartbreakingly real. After years of loyalty, rebuilding trust, and standing by Kirk through scandal after scandal, Rasheeda finally reached her breaking point. And this time, she didn't cry, she didn't beg, she walked. But what led up to this final, explosive walkout? What secret betrayal shattered Rasheeda's already fragile faith in her marriage? Sources close to the couple say the betrayal came from within. And no, we're not just talking about infidelity. This time, it's deeper. This time, it's about respect. And Rasheeda, the same woman who forgave a baby outside of their marriage, the same woman who held her family together when it was falling apart, has had enough. Eyewitnesses say the scene unfolded at a private gathering with close friends and family. But when Jasmine showed up unexpectedly, all hell broke loose. And the worst part, Kirk didn't stop her. In fact, he welcomed her. The air turned ice cold. Rasheeda's stare pierced through the crowd as whispers rippled across the room. Cameras caught her standing still for a moment, breathing deeply, as if gathering every ounce of composure before she said the words that will be replayed in VH1 history forever. "You'll regret this." Then, without another word, she turned and walked away, leaving behind the man she once loved, the life she once fought for, and the chaos that refused to change. Was this a power move or the end of an era? Is Rasheeda finally free or heartbreakingly defeated? Stay with us, because what happened after that walkout is even more explosive. Twists, tears, and truths are about to come to light, and, trust us, you're not ready for what happens next. Grab your popcorn, because this drama, it's just getting started. Kirk's eyes searched the room like he knew something was coming, but even he wasn't prepared for the moment Rasheeda finally reached her limit. It didn't happen with a scream or a slap. No. It happened in a silence so loud that everyone present felt it in their bones. The way Rasheeda stood there, perfectly still, tears shining but not falling, was more powerful than any outburst. For years, she had swallowed pain. For years, she had smiled through betrayal. But that night it was like something inside her broke for the final time. It had started days earlier, when Rasheeda began noticing the little signs. Missed calls from unfamiliar numbers. Late-night texts Kirk refused to show. Excuses that didn't quite line up. But Rasheeda wasn't the naive young girl she once was. She'd been down this road before, and the last time, it cost her almost everything. She wasn't about to let it happen again. She hired a private investigator not because she wanted proof Kirk was cheating, but because she wanted confirmation that she wasn't crazy. What she found, it wasn't another affair, it was worse. It was deception, manipulation, and something Rasheeda never imagined. Kirk had been meeting secretly with Jasmine again. Not romantically, at least not yet, but emotionally. Texts about missing old times, about how no one ever got him the way Jasmine did. Messages that undermined everything Rasheeda thought they had rebuilt. When confronted, Kirk brushed it off as just talking, claiming he wanted peace for the sake of the child he had with Jasmine. But Rasheeda wasn't stupid. She'd seen how emotional affairs start, and she knew exactly where this was headed. Yet even then she didn't explode. She asked for space. She asked Kirk to go stay at a hotel for a few days so she could think, but instead, he packed a small bag and went to Jasmine's. The betrayal was quiet, hidden, masked as keeping the peace, but to Rasheeda, it screamed louder than any affair. So when the family dinner came, a gathering meant to show unity, love, support, Rasheeda dressed herself in calm. She walked in composed. Not because she wasn't hurt, but because she was done allowing her pain to be the loudest thing in the room. Everyone was there, even Mama D, who kept giving Rasheeda strange, lingering glances like she knew something was about to pop off. But it wasn't until Jasmine walked in, uninvited, wearing a smug little smile and that same perfume she wore back when everything went to hell, that Rasheeda knew it was over. Kirk didn't flinch. He didn't stop her. He even pulled out a chair for her. And in that moment, Rasheeda saw everything clearly. The years she fought. The forgiveness she gave. The dignity she swallowed. All for a man who couldn't even offer her the bare minimum of loyalty, not just in action, but in intention. Jasmine leaned in to whisper something to Kirk. It was small. It was subtle, but it was enough. Rasheeda stood. Everyone looked. She didn't scream. She didn't shake. She just looked at Kirk and said, "You'll regret this," and then, she walked. The room froze. Even Jasmine looked rattled. Everyone thought she'd throw a drink or call out Jasmine in front of everyone, but the silence was worse. The silence said, "I'm done fighting. I'm done begging. I'm done with you." That was the moment. But what happened after? What happened next? That's where things got wild. Because Rasheeda didn't go home alone. She didn't cry in a car or disappear. No, she had a plan, and what she did next, nobody saw coming. Clicking with each purposeful step, she knew there was no turning back. She didn't cry until she was in her car. Not because she was weak, but because holding back in that room had taken every ounce of strength she had. As the engine roared to life, her phone lit up with missed calls. Kirk, Carly, even Bambi, but Rasheeda didn't answer. She drove through Atlanta, her hands shaking on the wheel, her mind a whirlwind of heartbreak, anger, and disbelief. And yet, underneath it all, a strange calm settled over her. She wasn't just walking away from Kirk, she was walking away from the version of herself that tolerated the bare minimum in the name of love. The next morning, social media was in chaos. Someone had leaked footage from the dinner. Just a few seconds, but it was enough. The clip showed Jasmine entering the room, Kirk pulling out her chair, and Rasheeda's quiet yet bond exit. Fans were shook. "Rasheeda deserves better" trended on Twitter. Instagram was flooded with support. Celebs like Candy Burris, Tiny, and even Yandi commented in solidarity. The narrative had shifted. Rasheeda wasn't just the loyal wife anymore, she was the betrayed queen who had finally drawn the line. But Kirk, he tried damage control. He posted a half-hearted apology video, saying things were misunderstood and claiming he had nothing but love for Rasheeda. He even had the audacity to say Jasmine was just there to talk about co-parenting. Fans weren't buying it. The comments dragged him to filth. "You had one job, you don't deserve her. She warned you, and you ignored her." Meanwhile, Jasmine was loving the attention. She went live, giggling through questions and fanning the flames with cryptic captions. Like "Some things never change and energy don't lie." She even posted a throwback pic of her and Kirk, casually captioned, "Good times." It was petty. It was calculated. And Rasheeda, she watched it all. In silence. But silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. Rasheeda met with her manager and her team. Within 48 hours, she announced a new reality special. Not just any special, Rasheeda Rebuilt. A no-holds-barred, raw, emotional journey documenting her healing, her business empire, and most importantly, her reclaiming of power. The network jumped on it. Sponsors lined up. Women across the country rallied behind her. And suddenly, Rasheeda wasn't just a reality star. She was a symbol. Kirk, on the other hand, was spiraling. With the internet turning on him, his endorsements started to pull back. One by one, the brand deals dried up. And Jasmine, her moment of fame started to turn sour. Fans flooded her comments with venom. Her past scandals were resurfaced. Even her so-called friends began to distance themselves. Rasheeda had said 5 words, "You'll regret this," and those words were now echoing louder than ever. But the real twist came days later, when Kirk showed up unannounced at Rasheeda's press shoot. Cameras weren't rolling, but a crew member leaked everything. He brought roses, a handwritten letter, and tears in his eyes. He begged, he pleaded. "I messed up," he said. "Please don't leave me. I'll cut Jasmine off. I'll do therapy. I'll fix everything. Just don't walk away." Rasheeda didn't flinch. She looked at him, steady and cold, and asked, "Why did it have to come to this for you to realize what I was worth?" He couldn't answer. And that's when she walked past him. Again, no tears, no drama. Just done. But Kirk wasn't ready to lose. He started sending gifts, calling family, trying to get through any way he could. Even Jasmine started backing off, realizing she was about to be dragged down with him. She made a post saying, "I never meant to cause problems. I just wanted peace." But it was too late. The damage was done. And Rasheeda, she was only getting started. Days turned into weeks, and while the world continued spinning, Kirk's world was falling apart publicly, messily, and in slow motion. Meanwhile, Rasheeda was on a different trajectory. She wasn't holed up crying in a dark room like Kirk probably expected. No, she was rising. The filming for Rasheeda Rebuilt was already underway, and the first teasers had fans salivating. The clips showed her wiping off her makeup in a mirror, walking barefoot through her empty house, and talking directly into the camera. "I've always been strong. But being strong doesn't mean you have to suffer." It was raw. It was real, and it was iconic. In those quiet moments, Rasheeda began reclaiming pieces of herself she hadn't touched in years. She revisited her boutique, pressed, with a new vision. She spent late nights with her kids, not worrying about Kirk's whereabouts or another apology. And most importantly, she started therapy not for Kirk, not for appearances, but for her. She wanted to unlearn the pattern of carrying a man who refused to carry her back. Her first session was filmed. The therapist asked, "When was the last time you felt safe?" Rasheeda paused. Tears welled in her eyes. "Before all this, I think I forgot what safe even felt like." But while Rasheeda was healing, Kirk was unraveling. He tried to take control of the narrative again by booking his own podcast appearance. "I ain't perfect, man," he told the host, "but everything I've done, it's been out of love. Even with Jasmine, I wasn't trying to be sneaky." The clip went viral, but not in the way he hoped. Fans called him delusional, out of touch, and gaslighter memes exploded. Kirk Frost crying into a mic while holding a rose. TikTokers reenacted Rasheeda's walkout with captions like "me, leaving every situation where I'm not respected." But Kirk wasn't done being messy. He leaked old voicemails of Rasheeda crying, trying to paint her as emotional and unstable. The move backfired horribly. Instead of gaining sympathy, he was ripped apart for weaponizing her vulnerability. Rasheeda's supporters doubled down, celebrities issued public statements of support. And even her old rivals, even Joseline Hernandez tweeted, "I may have fought her, but I respect that woman's strength. Kirk is trash." Meanwhile, Jasmine tried one last stunt. She posted a storytime video titled, "My Truth About Rasheeda," but the tone was off. It was condescending, filled with passive-aggressive comments, like "I always felt sorry for her and she made it easy for Kirk to come back to me." Within hours, Rasheeda clapped back without saying a word. She posted a single Instagram photo her in a gold power suit, sipping champagne on a rooftop at sunset, with the caption, "Peace looks good on me." No tags, no mention, just pure class. But what no one knew yet was that Rasheeda had one more card to play, and it involved the one thing Kirk had always underestimated: her silence. She had receipts, messages, photos, bank transfers. She had spent years documenting every betrayal, every lie, every apology that came with strings attached. Her producers hinted that the finale of Rasheeda, Rebuilt, would feature footage of the moment she found out about Kirk's latest emotional betrayal, and, let's just say, sources say Jasmine wasn't the only woman in those texts. That finale episode, though still unreleased, was already generating buzz. Rumors swirled that it ends with Rasheeda sitting in her home, looking straight into the camera and saying, "This isn't about revenge. It's about knowing when your heart deserves better. And mine does." Fans couldn't wait. But the drama wasn't done twisting. Because just when everyone thought Kirk had finally learned his lesson and disappeared into the background, he pulled one last desperate move. He proposed. Publicly. At a club event. Surrounded by cameras, fans, even Rasheeda's closest friends. He got on one knee, held up a diamond ring that probably cost less than a month's rent in Buckhead, and said, "Let's start over. For real, this time." And the moment went viral again. But Rasheeda's reaction, that was the jaw-dropper. She looked at him with the coldest, calmest face and said, "You only proposed to stop the bleeding, not to stop the betrayal." Then she walked off the stage. No tears, no hesitation, just a woman who knew her worth. That moment, fans say, felt like watching someone finally wake up from a years-long nightmare. And for Kirk, it was the final nail. He stood there, ring in hand, crowd murmuring around him, as Rasheeda disappeared behind the velvet curtain. Not into the shadows but into her own light. By the time the velvet curtain fell behind her, Rasheeda wasn't just walking away from Kirk, she was stepping into a version of herself that had been buried under years of compromise, quiet suffering, and public humiliation. And the world noticed. That clip of her rejecting Kirk's public proposal spread like wildfire. Within hours, blogs exploded with headlines, "Rasheeda leaves Kirk on one knee," and "The internet can't stop applauding." Fans who had grown up watching their turbulent love story felt something shift in that moment. This wasn't just drama anymore. This was a woman reclaiming her narrative. But the fallout. Oh, it was messy. Kirk tried spinning the story, saying he only proposed because he knew she still loved him deep down. He did interviews. He posted crying selfies. He even shared an old wedding photo with a caption that read, "We've been through worse. We can come back from this." But Rasheeda wasn't playing that game anymore. She ignored every post, every tag, every pitiful attempt at redemption. Because now, her energy was somewhere else entirely. Rasheeda rebuilt hit screens with the force of a cultural reckoning. The premiere shattered streaming records for VH1's online platform. People weren't watching for gossip, they were watching for truth. And Rasheeda delivered. The first episode opened with her sitting in her closet, holding a journal filled with letters she wrote to herself over the years. One line hit viewers like a punch to the chest. You kept waiting for him to change. But the real question is, when were you going to choose yourself? Behind-the-scenes footage revealed the years of manipulation, the emotional exhaustion, and the psychological cost of constantly being the bigger person. She detailed how every time she forgave Kirk, a little piece of her self-worth chipped away. Fans weren't just supporting her, they were relating to her. Women shared their own stories in the comments. Men admitted they saw themselves in Kirk's toxicity. The show wasn't just entertainment, it was a movement. And then came episode 2, the one that truly broke the internet. Because Rasheeda didn't just tell her story, she showed it. Hidden camera footage, yes, legal and cleared, captured a private moment between Kirk and another woman at a lounge 3 months before the dinner incident. It wasn't Jasmine. It wasn't even someone known to the cast. Just a 26-year-old waitress who didn't know he was married until she Googled him later. Kirk had been sloppy. And Rasheeda, she had proof. The footage aired with chilling silence as Kirk wrapped his arm around the girl and whispered, "My wife and I. We just play in-house at this point." Viewers were floored. He said that to a stranger, on camera. The betrayal hit harder than ever. And Rasheeda. She let the footage speak for itself. No angry rants. No revenge posts. Just facts. The same episode ended with her in a therapy session, finally breaking down as she said, "I kept hoping the man I loved would come back. But maybe he never existed at all." Kirk, blindsided by the footage, went dark on social media. No posts, no lives, no statements. Sources said he tried to get legal involved, but the footage was obtained by the production team legally and had no case. Meanwhile, Jasmine deleted her account entirely. People had stopped treating her like the other woman and started calling her the enabler, the girl code breaker, the home-raking echo that just wouldn't go away, and the waitress. She reached out to Rasheeda personally, sent a DM that read, "I had no idea. I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve any of this." But it wasn't just Rasheeda reclaiming her power, her circle was rallying too. Carly Red did a full 180, appearing on the show to say, "I wasn't always the best friend to you. But I see now what you've been dealing with. And I'm here for you." Even Bambi, usually tight-lipped, chimed in with public support. She stayed too long, but she left at the right time. What Kirk didn't understand, what he never understood, was that Rasheeda didn't want perfection. She just wanted partnership. She wanted consistency, safety, honesty. And when she realized she was the only one fighting for those things, she stopped fighting altogether. That's when the tide really turned. A women's empowerment brand reached out to Rasheeda for a campaign. The tagline, "Soft doesn't mean silent." Billboard deals were struck. A book offer landed on her lap. She wasn't just telling her story, she was creating space for others to tell theirs. And fans couldn't stop watching her evolve. The girl who once stood quietly by Kirk's side was now standing at podiums, giving speeches about healing, resilience, and knowing when to walk away with your crown still intact. And just when it seemed like things had reached their emotional climax, Rasheeda made one final, quiet move that said everything louder than words ever could. She changed her last name legally. No more Rasheeda Frost. Just Rasheeda, the woman, the brand, the survivor. Kirk saw the news online. That's how far gone he was, he didn't even hear it from her. A source close to him said he didn't leave the house for 3 days. And maybe now, maybe he finally understood. When Rasheeda said, "You'll regret this," she meant it, and he did. Rasheeda's name change wasn't just symbolic, it was seismic. Industry insiders said it shook Kirk more than any insult, any episode, or even that brutal public proposal rejection. Because deep down, he never believed she'd really leave. He thought she'd come back, like always. That no matter how bad things got, she'd eventually fold, forgive, and fall back into his arms. But this time, Rasheeda didn't just walk away. She rebuilt, rebranded, and reminded the entire world who she was without him. And Kirk. He was left watching from the sidelines, a silent spectator in the downfall of the empire he helped destroy. Meanwhile, Rasheeda's empire was only growing. Her boutique's relaunch went viral, lines wrapping around the block, press swarming the entrance, cameras catching every hug from fans who'd followed her journey for over a decade. Women flew in from other states just to meet her. One woman, from Detroit, brought her 14-year-old daughter and said through tears, "I wanted her to see what survival looks like." Rasheeda hugged them both, smiled, and said, "It's not about surviving anymore. It's about thriving." But even amid her rise, emotions ran high behind the scenes. Rasheeda's mother, Miss Charlene, sat her down in the kitchen one quiet evening and said what no one else had the nerve to say. "Baby, I'm proud of you. But I watched you shrink for that man. I watched you cry in rooms alone just so your kids wouldn't hear. I watched you pretend you were fine. And now that you're free, promise me something. Don't go back. Not even if he cries. Not even if he changes. Because you ain't the same woman no more." Rasheeda nodded, tears finally streaming not from pain, but from the weight of release. "I promise," she whispered. "I'm never going back." Kirk, though, he wasn't ready to let go. After disappearing from social media for nearly a month, he re-emerged with a video titled "My Truth." Sitting in a dimly lit room with a glass of whiskey, he rambled through half-hearted apologies, nostalgic stories, and vague "People don't see what goes on behind closed doors," he said. "Yeah, I made mistakes. But I ain't a monster. I loved that woman. Still do. She's my rib." The comments section was brutal. "Then why did you keep stabbing your rib?" one user wrote. "Too little, too late," said another. Even longtime Kirk supporters began to back away. He didn't look like a man seeking forgiveness. He looked like a man drowning in consequences. And Jasmine. She tried staying quiet, but she couldn't resist the spotlight forever. She reappeared on a podcast and gave a smug interview, brushing off the criticism and saying, "People love to hate me. But I'm not the one who broke up their marriage." He was, but fans weren't buying it. One fan tweeted, "You didn't hold the knife, but you sharpened it." Her brand partnerships dissolved, followers unfollowed, and even some of her own family distanced themselves from the mess. Meanwhile, Rasheeda Rebuilt reached its finale and, the final episode was nothing short of emotional chaos. The production team held nothing back. It opened with Rasheeda walking through the now empty home she once shared with Kirk. Room by room, she told stories, good memories and painful ones. "This was the couch I slept on when I couldn't stand sleeping next to him," she revealed in the living room. In the kitchen, she picked up a chipped mug and smiled faintly. "He broke this during an argument. I kept it to remind myself that forgiveness doesn't fix everything." But the real climax came when she opened a safe in the bedroom and pulled out a stack of letters, handwritten journals she'd kept through the years. One by one, she read excerpts aloud. The early entries were filled with hope, promises, dreams. "He's not perfect, but he's trying," she read, her voice trembling. But as the pages turned, the optimism faded. "I feel like I'm disappearing. I'm scared my sons will think this is what love looks like. Why do I feel lonelier married than I ever did alone?" The final entry brought the room to a standstill. "If he ever makes me feel small again, I'm leaving. And this time, I won't look back." The screen faded to black. Credits rolled. Fans were speechless. But Rasheeda wasn't done. In a post-finale interview, she shared what came next. A new home, a business expansion, a book deal, a podcast about emotional resilience, and yes, dating again. She didn't say names, but her smile said everything. "I'm not rushing into anything," she clarified. "But I finally feel like I can breathe. Like I'm not waiting for the next betrayal. And that's freedom." Kirk, watching all this unfold, finally seemed to understand what he'd lost. Not just a woman but a legacy. He once said Rasheeda was his rib, but now, she was her own backbone. Her own strength. Her own savior. And those 5 words, "You'll regret this," they weren't a threat. They were a prophecy. Because Kirk was regretting it. Every single day. Months passed, but the echo of Rasheeda's final words, "You'll regret this," still hung heavy in the air. Like smoke that wouldn't clear. The world had moved on, but Kirk hadn't. Not really. Everywhere he turned, he was reminded of what he lost. The billboard of Rasheeda's new book smiled down at him from the highway every morning. Her podcast voice popped up in ads between YouTube videos, sharing wisdom that no longer belonged to him. She was everywhere but never with him. And that was the part that hurt the most, because Kirk didn't just lose a wife. He lost access to a woman he thought would always be within reach. The streets of Atlanta were still buzzing with the story. Industry insiders whispered that Kirk had been blacklisted by some of the very brands that once funded his lifestyle. One high-profile business partner even pulled out of a collaboration, saying, "I don't align with men who tear down the very women that built them." He tried fighting back, tried pitching new projects, but nothing stuck. People weren't interested in the fallen man who had everything and fumbled it. Meanwhile, Rasheeda, she didn't just survive, she soared. Her podcast titled Unapologetically Rebuilt hit #1 on Spotify in the self-development category. Every episode was a lesson, a story, a truth wrapped in the voice of someone who had been through it. Fans called in, celebrities co-hosted. The audience wasn't just listening, they were healing with her. One fan left a voicemail that played in episode 4. "You helped me leave a relationship I was stuck in for 10 years. Thank you for choosing yourself. You gave me permission to choose me." And then came the tour. Rasheeda announced a speaking tours under the banner Leave Loud. The title alone was powerful. It wasn't about slamming doors or burning bridges. It was about walking away with your head high and your soul intact. Women packed theaters in New York, Miami, Chicago, and LA to hear her speak. Her Atlanta show sold out in under 12 minutes. At every stop, women in tears stood in line, holding her book, wearing her merch, and whispering the same words over and over. "You told my story." Back in Atlanta, Kirk watched from a distance. Rumors swirled that he had started drinking more, that his new relationships never lasted more than a few weeks, that he still kept a picture of him and Rasheeda in his wallet, torn and fading, but never thrown away. He even showed up once, uninvited, at one of her pop-up shops. Security turned him away gently, but firmly. He didn't fight, he just stood there, watching through the glass, as Rasheeda laughed with fans and posed for selfies. She didn't even know he was there. But fate, or maybe just poor timing, had other plans. They eventually crossed paths again at a charity gala for local entrepreneurs. Cameras flashed, music played, and across the room, their eyes met. For a second, everything went quiet. Kirk approached slowly, unsure. Rasheeda, ever poised, gave a polite nod. "You look good," he said, voice low. "Thank you," she replied, not breaking eye contact. "I see you're doing well." He looked down, then back at her. "I miss you." There it was. The confession. The moment that every fan, every critic, every friend had wondered about. But Rasheeda, she didn't flinch. "You miss access to me," she said softly. "Not me." Then she turned to greet someone else, leaving Kirk standing there in a sea of tuxedos and regrets. That moment hit social media within minutes, captured on video by a nosy influencer who lip-read the entire thing. "She ate and left no crumbs," one tweet read. "That man's soul left his body," said another. It became a trending sound on TikTok. Edits of Rasheeda walking away, Kirk standing frozen, and the line "You miss access to me, not me," played over dramatic music. She didn't just win the breakup. She rewrote the definition of how to walk away with grace, style, and absolute dominance. Jasmine. She had long disappeared from the narrative. Her 5 minutes of fame had run out. Her attempts to resurface as a spiritual healer online were met with brutal backlash. People didn't forget. They didn't forgive. And most of all, they didn't buy what she was selling. As the year wrapped up, Rasheeda's team released one final bombshell, a documentary titled The Woman Who Walked Away. It premiered at a private screening attended by Oprah, Michelle Obama, and Ava DuVernay. The trailer alone broke 1 million views in less than a day. The film chronicled not just the drama, but the evolution. From love to loss. From silence to power. From Rasheeda Frost to just Rasheeda. And as the credits rolled, one final scene left the audience in stunned silence. Rasheeda, sitting on a bench at sunrise, voiceover playing. "They say time heals all wounds. But I think time just shows you who was really bleeding, and who was just holding the knife." A beat of silence. A final image. Rasheeda standing on a cliff, wind in her hair. No ring, no regrets, no man by her side. Just peace. "You'll regret this," and he did. Forever. So now, as the dust finally settles, one truth stands tall. Rasheeda didn't just walk away. She rose. She turned her heartbreak into headlines, her pain into power, and her silence into a roar that shook the very foundations of the reality TV world. Kirk Frost. He became a cautionary tale. A man who had everything. And gambled it all away. Not just a marriage, not just a partner, but the kind of woman the world doesn't forget. The kind of woman who, once she finally says enough, never looks back. From viral walkouts and shattered proposals, to best-selling books and sold-out tours, Rasheeda's journey wasn't just about leaving, it was about liberation. She became the anthem for every woman who stayed too long. The face of what happens when you choose healing over habit. When you stop begging for respect and demand it instead. And those 5 words, "You'll regret this," will live on. Not as a threat, but as a prophecy fulfilled in front of millions. But what do you think? Was Kirk ever truly sorry? Or just sorry he got caught? Did Jasmine play a role in the downfall, or was she just another distraction from a man who never learned to value what he had? And most importantly, do you think Rasheeda should ever forgive? Or has she finally set herself free for good? Let us know in the comments below. We're watching everything you say, and we want to hear your voice. If this story had you gasping, crying, or screaming, "Yas Queen," make sure you hit that like button, subscribe for more explosive updates, and share this video with someone who needs a little reminder. Walking away is not weakness, it's war paint. This was the drama you didn't see coming. And trust us, there's more where that came from. Until next time, stay bold, stay real, and stay unapologetically you.